All right. Welcome, 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 gentlemen. JK, your brother in this struggle here. Today, as you can see from my topic, I'm going to be introducing our new reboot coach. Very excited to have her on board. She's our trauma reboot coach, Dr. Jessica Eastman. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you. I am very excited to be here.
All right. We're excited to have you as well. The brothers in the group were like freaking out. They're like, oh my God, there's someone to help us work on our trauma. So, why don't you just tell us briefly what you do and why you are excited about what you do and helping the brothers in our group?
Yeah, sure. So I am formally trained as a naturopathic doctor, and I've been working specifically in the mental health and trauma world for the past 7+ years. I've really narrowed my focus to working predominantly with trauma and trauma recovery and all of the relationships that it has with other mental health challenges like anxiety, depression, PTSD, disordered eating, sexual health, relationship health, because I think there's a lot of gaps in the current system when it comes to treating and supporting people in recovering from trauma. Both the conventional medical systems and the traditional talk therapy models are really great at covering the one tiny area that they're good at, but they are not particularly comprehensive in providing the support that some people need in order to recover from their trauma. And so I feel particularly passionate about helping people to do that because I think most of us as human beings on this planet are going to experience trauma at one point or another. And it's not something that you just have to then like be weighed down by and limited by for the rest of your life, in my opinion. So the work I do is very much centered around supporting the nervous system and setting individuals up to be able to shift into a place where their nervous system will allow them to heal and recover and rebuild, which includes like learning new mindsets and reframing paradigms and understanding their current behaviors through the lens of trauma and how we can build new behaviors and patterns and mindsets that are going to be more conducive to the life that people want to live moving forward. So that's
That is
the things that I care about.
That's pretty comprehensive. Guys, I will say that the one thing that intrigued me with Dr. Eastman was just her beliefs about the traditional system and realizing that there was a lot more that you could do outside of it. As you guys already know, I've never been a big proponent of the you are forever an addict and you have to live with this for the rest of your life. That's just one box. And there are so many methodologies. As human beings, we're very complex creatures. There's so many studies being done on this. And I'm always looking for somebody who is constantly learning, constantly growing, and flexible when it comes to not only their beliefs, but some of the traditional, the what do you call them? Sacred cows when it comes to things. Somebody who's willing to challenge those things as well with data and with the right training. So that's why Dr. Jessica is here with us. The second thing was her focus on the nervous system and her understanding of this. And often brothers who are in the later stages of their reboot who use our program, I've been the first to admit that we do have a limitation. And while we can help men control their sexual behavior, if they do have a past that is traumatic, often they don't know who they can open up to. And sometimes when they work with a therapist who is not familiar with addiction, they often focus on their trauma and kind of leave out other aspects. So we were looking for somebody who was holistic and who understand the nervous system, which is important because your nervous system is also involved when you get triggered. It's involved in your arousal template. It's involved in basically everything that you do within our system. So really excited for the work Dr. Jessica and I are going to do together in that area as we work with you guys. But what we're going to do briefly today is we had some brothers who submitted some questions. And if you don't mind, Jessica, I'd like to just kind of read them out to you and you can just give some brief responses.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. And gentlemen, just a heads up that after this, we'll be sharing how you can get on one-on-one calls with Dr. Jessica. If you're one of those who asked the questions, I'd like to make it clear that As a professional, she does her best to work with you guys one on one. So there's a lot more context that she's not able to get from your question. And this is, I wouldn't say it's serious work, but it's work that's best done when there's depth, when there's trust, when there's a certain amount of intimacy that's built up. And this is best done in a one on one setting. So
Mhm.
just bear that in mind as she answers the questions.
Thank you. Yeah, I totally agree.
All right, let me bring up the first question. I won't share the brother's name, you know yourselves. But the first question is for the entire March 2022 this year. This brother says, I was severely depressed and suicidal. He said he also gained a lot of weight due to not moving and overeating, which made me stumble upon or realize that I very likely have bipolar type 2 disorder. I was treated in a mental ward for a short time period and basically regained clarity of thoughts the first day after getting sleeping pills to relax. After this incident, I sometimes have a sense that I'm running away from a major pain, as if I'm avoiding the process of grieving and sadness for everything I've lost and missed out on
Mhm.
because of decades of compulsive behavior. If this is indeed the case, how can I shed light on this grief and stop avoiding it?
Wow, that's like such a powerful, insightful question. So thank you to whoever was willing to be vulnerable and share that. I think it's a really great question, and you're sharing, you're demonstrating a lot of insight into what you're going through by just being able to ask the question. And I think one of the things that I am constantly checking in with and reminding my clients about is that if you have a gut feeling about what you think you might need, it's important that you share that with your coaches and therapists, and we honor that. So in this case where you say, like, I think I'm running away from something, I think it's probably the decades of grief and pain that I've been avoiding, I think you're right. And I think that it's really important that we start to enable you to break through those limitations, but it has to be done in a really gentle and conservative way, because ultimately we need to understand big scale. The reason why you were running away from those things and using compulsive behaviors to distract yourself from them is because your nervous system didn't feel like it was safe for you to feel all of those feelings and or experience all of the grief of the things that you've lost or experienced over the years. And that's probably a combination of two things. Number one, perhaps some experiences in your past demonstrated to you that it wasn't safe for you to feel or express feelings because of other people's reactions, maybe. And number two, often our nervous systems subconsciously are trying to protect us from being like overwhelmed or drowned by the feelings. And so they don't let us feel them at all. And so a lot of the work that I do one-on-one in sessions with people is to help teach them how to start to create safe spaces, and then open that drain to let feelings out a tiny bit. The concept in the somatic trauma work world is called titration and pendulation. And so it's just like just a little bit so that you can feel the intensity of it, but then you pull back before it drowns you, before it overwhelms you or trips you into panic or being super triggered, because that's not productive. And then over time, we just expand your capacity to be with uncomfortable feelings and also know that you're safe during that, which is over time going to help to like drain that bucket even more. And then suddenly it's not going to feel like you've got a ton of stuff back there that you're toting around trying to distract yourself from all day.
I love that response. I think it's particularly insightful because without saying this client's name, I have had some one-on-one sessions with this client. And again, this is presumptuous. I'll allow the one-on-one sessions to do it, but this client does have a past of not being able to express themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I love what you said about not just, how would I put it, figuring out maybe what happened that got you to the point where it's you're running away from grief and things like that. But I love the concept of titration
Mm-hmm.
and getting a little taste of the intensity of whatever that might be. then stepping back. And I was curious, are there tools that you share with clients to help them maybe relive that on their own without the fear of like the fences breaking and just everything pouring out? Because I really think that's what clients are afraid of.
Yeah, no, totally. I think that's what humans are afraid of, and it
Mm.
makes sense. I think understandably and rightly so, our nervous system is protecting us from going into that in an entirety, right? Like, it was the reason why trauma happens is because the first time you experienced it, it was too overwhelming for you to process in the moment. So your nervous system learned back then that this is too much. I can't handle it. I have to compartmentalize it. So to answer your question, yes, there are absolutely tools that we can eventually work up to for the client to be able to do on their own. It's a slow process because it really has to do with the nervous system trusting and you trusting your own self, that you'll be able to tell when you get to the edge and be able to pull yourself back before you get tripped over. The other component here is that most of the work I do is actually not at all reliving the bad stuff that happened to you or recounting the details. I think it's a thing that gets a lot of focus in traditional talk therapy, and it's also, I mean, it's almost not that relevant in the work that I do because we're focused on the here and the now and the behaviors and the patterns and the mindsets that you've got. And there's definitely, for some people, some value in explaining or realizing or making connections like, oh, this response that I have comes from this place. And now that I can see it's not happening anymore, I can let it go. But a lot of the time, you don't remember or it's too scary to relive. And that's not that important because what we actually will work towards is you being able to feel the feelings separate from the story where they originated. And that's once that separation has been able to be accessed in your mind, that's when you can feel the feelings on your own without getting drowned by them, because it's the story that triggers people, not the feelings.
Love it. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. As you guys know, when it comes to sexually compulsive behaviors, there's a lot of focus in traditional therapy on the root cause. And like, guys show up and they're like, oh my God, I've been visiting with this therapist, who are great people. They're really good at what they do. However, the problem the client often has is that they're like, we just keep talking about this thing and it causes me to keep slipping and relapsing.
Mm-hmm.
The entire concept of PornReboot is focusing on what you can do with you're living your life right now. So moments to moments as you live your life, you want to be able to deal with this and handle this so that you can be functional. And you're right when you say there is a place and a time for understanding where that comes from. But I love your emphasis on the fact that it really doesn't matter with your now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, now you have power over it. And if you can learn how to control this moment, the past and even the future become irrelevant because we
Yeah.
can just constantly live in this, right?
Yeah. And it's not to dismiss the experiences that have happened to you or their impact on you now at all. And I don't think you're saying that either, but just,
Yeah.
I know I've been on the other side of
Yeah.
it. And sometimes you hear that. It's not about that at all. It's just exactly like you said, like, let's change what we can change, which is the now. And we work there, and reliving the experiences doesn't empower you to be better at changing the now.
Yeah. So guys, now when you get on one-on-ones with her and Jessica, just so you know, when clients get on calls with me, I tell the brothers, like, yeah, I would love the context, but I really want to see how we can help you
Mm-hmm.
now, so that when you get off this call, you have something that you can use even at that moment after getting off. If you have, like, well, Brene Brown calls it a vulnerability hangover, like,
Yep.
how to handle that in the
Yes.
moment, or maybe not handle it, maybe just be aware of it and be okay with that.
Yeah.
So you'll probably hear that emphasis from her as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. All right, let's take. I think we can take one more question. Thank you so much for answering that, Jessica. The next one is, let's see here. Give me one moment. Oh, here's the question. All right. I tend to move towards self-destructive behaviors whenever I see my childhood family. They want to see me, but I don't want to see them. I'm reminded of my past, and it makes me feel very negative whenever I'm around them. And I feel like this is me running away from pain. But when I try to face it, I'm reminded of why I was so eager to distance myself from them. Almost all of them struggle with mental health disorders and do not seek to improve their circumstances. I've tried to change their mindset, but to no avail. This brings me a lot of pain, and I don't know how to deal with it.
Yeah, this is a really common, really, really common experience. So many adults with trauma come from traumatized families, and it can be really challenging when you grow up and separate from your family of origin and work really hard to change your life and to feel better, to only have it all brought back up when you go home to visit your family. So I want to just first say, like, this is a very normal experience, and it is not an easy thing. Like, me and all of my colleagues and every therapist I've ever talked to also struggle with the same thing, because family of origin stuff is really, really tough. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But to address, like, specifically, how do you navigate this? I think there's a few things that are important to address here. So the first, I want to pull out a sentence that this question included, which was, I feel like I'm running away from pain if I don't go and see them. That was the general sentiment. And I think that there's an important, there's some granularity here that would be important for us to understand. Running away from pain that you are experiencing is like what the first question was about, right? Is distraction and behavior that is separating you from being able to feel your feelings. Making an intentional choice to avoid things that are going to cause you future pain is not running away from pain. That's you having respectful boundaries for your own needs and desires. And I think those are really important concepts to separate from, because there's a lot of rhetoric in our society about how there's this expectation or obligation that you're supposed to spend time with your family, even if they're hurting you. And I don't subscribe to that. I think everybody has to treat you the way you want to be treated, whether they're blood relation to you or not. And so ultimately, how you navigate this is up to you. The way to continue to maintain connection with your family and not have it be really, really challenging. I think that this is a big topic, but I think really high level, the two concepts here are, number one, figuring out what your boundaries are. You know, are there specific topics that you don't want to talk about with your family? Are there specific words that you don't want them to say to you in, you know, in reference to your history? Are there like quiet hours where you're like, okay, yeah, I'm going to sleep, or I'm going to stay in the guest room and I don't want to be interrupted? Are there maybe times of day, or sorry, times of duration that you're going to be willing to spend with them? You say like, yep, I'll come over for dinner, but I'm not staying for drinks, or, you know, I'm not staying for Christmas, or whatever that is. You get to decide what feels good for you, and also know that your boundaries are dynamic, right? So what you might need or want to be able to make it accessible right now is not necessarily going to be what you need or want next month or next year. And that's okay. It's up to you to communicate clearly, calmly, respectfully your boundaries to the people around you. And it's up to everybody that they're being communicated to decide how they want to receive them. You can't control that. And then the other tool that I like to suggest people try out when they're feeling nervous in anticipation of going to connect with their family, is to have to build in a few touchstone anchor points throughout your day or your time with them that remind you of the new version of yourself that you have become. And so that could be like a thing you hold in your pocket that you can keep squeezing as you're having a tough conversation with your father, or like a sweater that you wear, or, you know, you book phone calls with friends or people that remind you of your new life, so that you don't get fully lost and pulled back into the old version of yourself or whatever your family wants to trigger you in. And then beyond that, I think all you can do is just have a lot of compassion and patience for yourself, and understand that, like, this is where a lot of the trauma originated in a lot of us. And so it's going to be the richest in terms of potential retriggering. And it's just going to take time for you to time and willingness on their end as well to meet you where you're at in your new version of yourself. And they may or may not be willing to do that. And you get to decide how you want to proceed based on how they're behaving towards you.
Cool. I love that. I promise you guys, I've not had many conversations like this with Jessica. And the reason I'm saying this is because it is so in tune with what we do here at Porn Reboot, which is um, this brother was talking about he feels that he's running away. And it's so important, like Jessica has said, to realize that it's okay to set boundaries and learn that you can step away from these expectations. Sometimes family can seem very rigid and unchanging, but that should not deter you because at the end of the day, it's so many of us like throw ourselves on the sword of family dynamics, right? We're just like,
Mhm.
oh, but there's the whole, like you were alluding to, I have no choice. It's the only
Mhm.
family I have. It's perfectly fine to set boundaries. And I think Jessica explained this and expressed this better than I ever could. The other thing I just wanted to reiterate that I really liked was the idea. We have a concept in Porn Reboots off anchoring, like using a rubber band or different things. But I don't think I've ever shared with the group, and this is probably my first time actually hearing it, that you can anchor yourself to remember who you are. And just for clarity, for those of you who are watching this live for the first time, the reason that we say rebooting instead of recovery, it's very simple. It might be semantics, but it's important. Recovery traditionally is just, again, semantics. It's recovering the things which you lost to your
Mhm.
compulsive behavior. There's nothing wrong with that. But the truth is, sometimes we try to recover things that shouldn't be recovered. The
Yeah.
stream has flowed away, it's gone. Rebooting is hitting the reset button. It is realizing that you can create a new identity, you can change your self-image, and you can be a brand new person that's free of all the stories that you told yourself, or you can reframe those stories if they're too difficult to let go of. So I
Mhm.
just wanted to say, Jessica, I'm excited that that intrinsically you just your it sounds like your values and your way of working with people is very much in tune with ours, and it's just so exciting to see you organically share this as you respond to questions.
Yeah, awesome. I'm very stoked. I think it's really cool to meet somebody who thinks in a like-minded way about recovery, reboot, healing. Like there's not that many of us yet, so it's encouraging for me and I'm excited to be able to work with you and your clients for sure.
Cool. I really do feel in general that all the people, the coaches who've started working with Porn Reboot, they're not many of us. It's taken me many years to find people like that. And I've had to start looking based on instinct because I really think this is the future
Mhm.
of healing, the future of rebooting has to
Yeah.
be based on this. The traditional methodologies are great, but as the world changes so quickly, we do have to be willing to keep up. And simple concepts like um, you can set boundaries with your family. It's surprising how many people just can't let go of that, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I totally agree. The world has changed. We don't have to settle for just like the old ways anymore.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, for those of you who joined us live, thank you very much. Whether you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're watching it on YouTube, then that's actually good because I was going to share this only in our in our private groups. But just know that Dr. Jessica is available with us as a trauma reboot coach. She's available for one-on-one sessions. All you need to do is reach out to your reboot strategist and ask them how you can get that set up. And you'll also be able to get on calls with her periodically every month. Once we iron out the details, I'll be putting up a schedule for you guys, and she'll have Q&A sessions. She's also busy and has her own practice, so she's not going to be able to speak to everyone. So the Q&A sessions will be to make up time for that. We also expect to have a wait list. So gentlemen, if you feel that this is something that you've waited on, and I know some of you guys have been like, JK, I'm not going to speak to a therapist till you approve them and you bring them into the program and it's safe for me to do so. I want you to know that Dr. Jessica has my blessing, so to speak, and she's a safe person to speak to. So, Dr. Jessica, any last word to the gentleman of the Reboot program?
No, I think maybe just thank you. And I'm excited to meet you and hear your stories and help you to feel the way you want to feel.